Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Talk Time with Terry and our guest candidate for Common Plea Judge Lauren Leiggi. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Good. Good afternoon, Terry. It's nice to be with you. This is a really cool new experience for me being on your show.
Yeah. And I know you're busy because the campaign is still fresh. It's still in the middle of it, rather. So I
It
know you're
is.
busy. So we thank you so much for taking time out of the campaign to come and talk with Talk Time with Terry.
No, thank you. I think this is the more fun part of the campaign trail for me is getting just out there, getting to know the voters, and having people get to know me better. So I really appreciate the opportunity with you this Sunday afternoon.
Okay, great. Well, let's get started. Um, tell us what actually inspired you to run for the position of Court of Common Pleas.
Yeah. Well, I always actually wanted to be a judge.
Mhm.
It's something that happened, I guess, in law school while I was there. I interned for a Puerto Rican judge. Her name is the Honorable Mia Roberts Perez. I worked with her for about a year to 2 years, and just seeing her on the bench, she was fierce. She was able to help her community on the bench, and just see how she handled the simplest probation violations to trial cases. She actually convinced me to be a public defender. I wanted nothing to do with the criminal system. I was like, I'm going to work with artists. I'm going to do pro bono
Oh,
work.
wow.
Yeah. And then seeing her and seeing the PDs in the room, when you just have that aha moment,
Hmm.
that clicks of, oh, this is what you need to do. That's why you're so scared of it, because it's the right thing. And she inspired me to do it. I just saw the amazing work she did for her community. And she was like, Lauren, you can do it one day. If you can defend your client's rights, and they're going to be the most hated person in the courtroom, you can be a judge. And I was like, okay.
Oh,
But it really was just, I mean, I think there's no right time to be a judge. You can always do a little bit more in your career, or you can say, oh, I've been doing this for a while, I want to retire. But when I saw that there was so many seats open in the bench, and
mhm,
I thought that there was a lack of representation, a
mhm.
lack of a younger, fresh perspective on the bench. Um, and just with my background of being a public defender and also being an immigrant advocate, I was talking to a few of my colleagues. There's my cat. And they were just like, you know what, Lauren, there's never a good time. You have the time, you have the space, you have a supportive wife, a supportive community. Now's the time to take on a new adventure. This door is open for you, so you might as well take it. And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, no better time than the present. With everything that's going on, it just felt like it was right for me.
yeah. And that is so true because and what I'm hearing is that as you said, you felt that there was no representation. So instead of complaining about a vision that you see, you decided to jump into the fight. So I commend you for that. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for that. Thank you.
Thank
Now,
you.
can you describe to us, and I think you tapped into it a little bit, your professional background and how it has prepared you for this particular election right now?
Yeah. So the most immediate thing that I'm doing is I'm a public defender with the Allegheny County Office of the Public Defenders. So I've gone all over the county to the lower level magistrate courts representing clients, doing hearings. I've done bond motions. I've sat in the Allegheny County Jail talking to my clients. I've done everything from suppression motions, sentencing. I've done grand jury indictment cases. Uh, Attempt homicides. I've assisted on homicide. So I've kind of I've done it all in the courthouse. We call public defenders, our joke is it's dog years worth of service. I got my gray hairs coming in because of this job. And it's great. I mean, I do criminal defense work. If you can't afford an attorney, we represent you. And to me, that feels great because I don't pick and choose my clients. They just come to me, and I have folks saying, oh, how can you represent so and so? And I went, you never know who is charged with a crime
Mm,
and what for and what their background is. So to me, it feels good that I don't have that distinction of who's going to pay me to make sure that the rights are there for them.
mm,
And I think if your loved one was in a situation, you would want them to make sure that they had help. So that's my primary work right now. And then I also work with immigrants and non-citizens. So I saw that there was a need here about about 4 years ago, where we kept outsourcing work, where the state law and the federal law says that if you're a non-citizen, you're going through a court case, whether you're undocumented or you have permanent status or you're a student, your criminal case will impact your pathway to citizenship. So I started that unit. So I'm the lead attorney and I supervise two other attorneys. And we make sure that anyone that's coming through the criminal system, that their pathway to citizenship, or if they're just here temporary, isn't impacted, or if it's going to be impacted, that we represent them with that matter. So that's really near and dear to my heart. So I love doing that work, and I have job security right now, and I wish I didn't, but but that's what I do. And before coming out to Allegheny County, I did it all. I worked for Penn Law School and
Mm,
I oversaw 30 pro bono projects. I worked on a team of really fierce women, and we made sure that law students completed their graduation requirements. So we did everything from election housing rights, voter rights, going overseas on the border, servicing people in other countries.
mm.
So just kind of working with a bunch of law students and being a paralegal for so many years and helping them, it just really inspired me myself to go back to law school. Because when I said I've done every odd and end job, I've done all from sell shoes to working a pizza joint. So
Commitment.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
how would you take your
Hmm.
commitment as a public defender, making
Hmm.
sure that your clients get what they need, get represented to the highest of your potential in the courtroom? How would
Hmm.
you take that commitment and passion and into the if elected to the bench? How
Yeah.
would you take that into your courtroom?
How to take that? Yeah. To me, it's super, super simple of having the patience and having the temperament to make sure that everyone that comes in the courtroom, no matter if it's a family, criminal, or civil law matter, that they
Mhm.
have their day in court. Too many times as a public defender, we're kind of sitting. There's the phrase "sitting and waiting" for things to happen, and patience runs thin, and then all of a sudden, I have maybe 5 minutes in front of the judge to make my argument about something.
Mm,
So making sure I take that step back. If I myself, I'm only human. So if I find my patience running thin, I'm like, oh, let me take a moment, remember what it was like on the other side,
mm,
and give everybody their day in court. Because I think the frustrations that I saw, whether any room that no particular room that I've been in, but it's just, someone's having a bad day, and someone's bad day will impact someone's life for the next few years or their family. So just really taking that time and that attention and that care to make sure that I get the law right, that I give people the opportunity to be heard. Because I also sometimes I feel bad too when there's a victim on the case and the
mm,
judge is kind of speeding them through and they're like, okay, let's get through
mm,
your victim impact statement. And I was like, I'm the
mm.
defense attorney, and I'm like, wait, why are we hurrying them up? Why
Yeah,
are we
yeah.
making them go quicker? Um, so making sure I'm efficient, but doing efficiency in a way that everyone can
Mm.
have the time and the care. Because I think being a public defender, you have people on their worst days.
Yeah.
They're yelling at you in the jail because no one will listen to them. And so if I sit through that, I love sitting through that. So I want to make sure that I think patience goes a really long way because people don't understand the law and they don't have access to the law.
Wow. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that. And actually, you really we're that really tapped into my next question.
Mhm.
But before I ask my next question, I want to make sure that our audience know to any questions that they may have for you. Um, to please put them in the chat. Put them in our. We will make sure that Miss Leiggi gets these questions. If she's not able to answer them during this time, we will make sure that she gets your questions and she will be able to answer them at a different time. But so please put your questions. Okay, so to go back, I'm going to circle back a little bit because of your of the what you experienced as a defense attorney.
Mhm.
And one of my questions is, what does racial justice look
Mm.
like for you in the criminal legal system?
Gosh, I appreciate that you called it the criminal legal system, because I think that justice is such a nuanced word because it
Mhm,
depends on who's looking at justice.
mhm,
Because if you're in a chant saying no justice, no peace, but then you
mhm,
have the other side saying, well, no, we do have justice. Like, why
mhm,
are you being disruptive?
mhm,
So I think for me, it's just breaking it down to understanding that justice means something different for
Mhm,
everyone.
mhm,
And depending on the community you come from. So my mom, she grew up in the Heights,
mhm,
in
mhm,
New York City. She's a Dominican woman. So something of what justice would mean to her
mhm,
is completely different to, the neighbors that I have now here. I'm a neighboring to Squirrel Hill, East Liberty. Justice means so much, so many different
mhm,
things.
mhm,
So racial justice means having the awareness and the understanding to see that people come from different backgrounds, they come from different communities, different areas of wealth, and taking that all into account. Because I don't want to treat anyone different based upon the color of their skin.
yeah,
I really want to have this objective viewpoint when I'm being a judge, because that's what you're supposed to do.
mhm,
However, taking the time to understand, okay, I have this client who doesn't understand why maybe having a gun for his protection when he can't own one
mhm,
isn't in his best interest. I'm like, and he's like, well, because I hear it all the time. They're like, oh, Miss Lauren, but I need this for X, Y, and
mhm,
Z. And I'm like, listen, I can tell you that I understand it, I hear it, but
wow,
it's still not in accordance with the law. So why don't we take a step back to figure out what we need to do? So I never want to be overly paternalistic to someone.
mhm,
And I'm
mhm,
like, how can I help you find the tools so that you feel like having a gun illegally and having a gun is no longer in your best interest? So to me, that's what racial justice means, kind of taking a step back, understanding where the person's coming from, giving them the chance to explain where they're coming from so that I can figure out of maybe, hey, what tools do
yeah,
you need? Because I'm always at the believer, if you teach someone how to do something, they're going to be a lot better than just telling them how to do it. So to me, that's what racial justice means.
wow. I greatly, greatly appreciate that because, you know, I was having a conversation that, I the view for Squirrel Hill is going to be a whole different
Hmm.
agenda for Sheridan or
Yeah.
McKees Rocks or something like that. So I greatly, greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. Um, my next question, I think you already answered. How would you approach fairness? And you have
Okay.
answered that several different times in several different ways. So now being a public defender, how
Mhm.
do you handle heavy caseloads and ensure that the cases are given the same amount of attention?
Oh man, we we can talk for hours on that. I have so many it's hard. It's hard. I hate the word that triage comes that was the first thing in my head, and I hate that that came into my
Hmm.
head of making sure of sometimes if I have a lower level offense, um I'm like, okay, maybe I can solve it in this way. I'm going to take a lot less time than if I have if I have an assault case against another individual. So it is a balancing act of having to have the experience and just kind of that quick thinking of being able to read a thing quickly, being able to assess what the legal issues are, maybe bouncing it off another person, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, cool, like this makes sense, let me move on to the next thing. So that's kind of what I do. I think it's also key to make sure I'm set up for success with I have my calendars, I have my spreadsheets, I have my colleagues, I have an office mate where her and me bounce things off of each other all the time to kind of do a check and balance. So kind of having a peer review I think is always super important as a public defender, and
Hmm.
I won't always be able to have that if I'm elected as a judge. So in my head, I'm like, oh gosh, I have a big docket. Maybe let me bounce that off of my
Yeah,
clerk.
yeah.
And knowing how to delegate, I think that's super important as a public defender. We have an amazing team of investigators, of social work, of support staff. So in my head, it's always hard knowing, okay, when do I need to give up my power and give
Mm,
it to someone else to help me get through the day? And that's what I've been leaning into as a public defender of I'm only one person, but we have an amazing group of team from attorneys to non-attorneys in the office.
yeah,
So leaning on my teammates is super important to me and gets me through the day because gosh, we need more funding at our office, and
yeah.
we need more staff. So it's super hard, but it's kind of knowing when you need to do something and knowing when someone else can help you out with something.
That's huge,
Yeah.
Lauren. That is really huge because to give up power and to know when to give it is to give up power first is hard. Okay. So and
Yeah.
then to know when to give it up is even
Hmm.
It can be even harder. So thank you so much for that. I respect that. Um, Now, as of cash bail, will you, if elected, would that be in your power to implement a bond? And if so, what does that look like? Cash bail. I'm sorry. What does that look like?
Yeah. So a common pleas judge doesn't have as much to do with cash bail as, say, the magistrates would.
Hmm.
The magistrates are the one where they're at the Pittsburgh Municipal Court or the surrounding community. So you may be out at a magistrate court in Monroeville or all the way out, in Tarentum, something pretty far away, and that magistrate judge will be doing the cash bail or monetary denying it or whatnot. At the Court of Common Pleas, it looks slightly different.
Hmm.
So what my experience is normally I would either the Commonwealth would be seeking to revoke my client's bond, or my client did something where bond modification might be necessary, or in the alternative, I might say, hey, my client, has X, Y, and Z bond in the jail. We now have them set up with a treatment plan,
Hmm.
or we're resolving the case or something like that, and then I put the motion forward. So as a judge, what I would do is it would kind of depend on who is asking me to modify their bond and in what manner, what are the circumstances around it. um, because as a public defender myself, cash bond can be used in personally in harmful ways where
Hmm.
you're giving someone a $5,000 bond for a DUI offense, where someone gets released on your own recognizance for the same
Hmm.
DUI. And when you start to look at, okay, why was one person given this and that, to me it almost seems like an arbitrary distinction.
Hmm.
Usually it's based in race when
Hmm.
you're giving someone $5,000 bond. So I've always been of the opinion that if there's no condition that can have the person safely in the community and coming to court on time, that the criminal rules of procedure allow you to deny the bond in that circumstances if there's nothing that can secure their position, like secure them coming to court in a safe manner. To
Hmm.
me, that seems way better. You deny the bond, the person that's sitting in the jail gets time credit for the time that they're sitting there, um, versus giving some really high amounts. And if they have a wealthy family member and a $50,000 bond,
Yeah.
they're getting out of jail. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the community is safe. So I would always lean back on the rules of procedure. I use them all the time. There's about 6 different factors that I would use as a judge to saying, can this person come to court safely? Will they come on time? Or there may be other conditions, like maybe they just need some treatment, maybe they need to get an assessment, maybe they need to go to therapy, and that'll help them come to court on time. Um, and I like that the rules are there, and if you use the rules in the right way, you have pretty good results.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that because several of people that I know,
Hmm.
have asked, to
Hmm.
explain the process with the Court of Common Pleas and
Hmm.
bond. And so I really great because this is an educational setting,
Yeah.
with Talk Time with Terri. So thank you so
Hmm.
much for breaking that down for us. Um, yes, thank you so much for that. So my next question, let's see, when do we have time? Yes, we have time.
Okay.
Before we get to any audience questions, I don't see any as of yet. Um, you already answered. You answered a lot of my questions.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, Let me ask you this: what
Hmm.
do you think sets you apart from other candidates?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I think to me, I mean, so I think I don't want to try not to humble brag, but what sets me apart is, I think first and foremost, my diverse lived experience
Hmm.
where I'm not the youngest candidate in the field, but I'm one of the younger candidates,
Hmm.
which I think first and foremost would actually let me serve out my full tenure as judge. And
Hmm.
then with the retention, because it's a 10-year term,
Hmm.
and then when you're retained, you're kind of retained until lifetime until you age out at 75.
Hmm.
And so in my mindset, I could, if I elected, I could actually do my full 10-year term. And then if
Hmm.
retained, I could do a full career until my mid 50s, sorry, late 50s. um, before, I decide of, okay, is this something I want to keep doing? I've been doing this for 20 years, or do I want to make a career pivot? When I think that's so important of being able to just have that option. Um, and because it's not I'm not saying this in a negative way against any of the sitting judges, but we're in the situation right now where we have 8 seats open because a lot of the judges aged out.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't able to make that decision for themselves if they wanted to continue practicing or do something else. And I think that that can be a harm to the community members when you're having people that are 75 years old, they're getting aged out of the system, they can't make the decision for themselves, and now us as the community, we're like, oh gosh, there's this huge
Yeah. Yeah.
eight seats open, and that's a lot of a lot of turmoil
Mm-hmm.
that can possibly happen. So having candidates who are a little bit on the younger scale, I think, is helpful to the community in the long term. In addition to that, when I said my diverse lived experience, I've done everything from community college,
Mm-hmm.
then I went to an Ivy League school, and then I went to Temple, which was the number one trial ad school in the nation. And it brings a diversity to the bench of a lived experience where I understand what going to community class is like. I also understand what going to one of the most rigorous schools undergrad in the nation is like, and
Mm-hmm.
then a really tough and empowering law school, and being able to bring those communities to the bench, because I think in just my time period in Pittsburgh, I've seen such an influx in community of different perspectives. And to me, where I grew up in New Jersey, it truly was a melting pot of different perspectives and different ideals. And I mean, hey, it gets us better food too. But
Well,
and I think, yeah.
I'm sorry. I
And
didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't mean
yeah.
to cut you off. I'm sorry. But
No.
we do have some questions from the audience.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. One is,
Hmm.
wait. What do you believe to be the root cause for
Hmm.
high numbers of juvenile offenders? And what
Gosh.
changes can the court system make to reduce these numbers?
Gosh, that's hard. Juvenile offenders, because there's so many variables that cause juvenile offenders. A
Mhm,
lot of it is, I think the first and foremost is instability in the home.
mhm,
Of you don't necessarily have to have a two-parent household. It can be a village
mhm,
raising the child as well, or a really strong single parent. But I think it's that those cycles of violence that you see, or the cycles of generational trauma that you see, um, where we're not interfering with it, where we're not disturbing it. I would have loved to be an education attorney in another lifetime, because I do think that giving children access to education, access to after school opportunities, can really disrupt the school to prison pipeline, or just having so many juvenile offenders. And I also think a big part of it is just community understanding and engagement of, you have a lot of children that just have nowhere to go after school.
mhm,
And I think this isn't what I judge can do, but, or actually, no, maybe I could. Just having more individuals in the community that are connecting with juveniles and the youth. I thought this really great program that I saw. It was in an urban area where I grew up, where they actually put laundromats in the school themselves. They put a washer and dryer because the schools had uniforms. So it was black and brown kids being able to wash the laundry after school on their own, because maybe they didn't have, their parents didn't have the access to do that. They were able to have dinner after school, and then they were also able to help with their homework. And so I think if you have, community leaders, and as a judge, I can't do political things, but I could do
mhm,
things like that of, figuring out, after a busy day, how can I get back into the community? How can I make myself accessible to the community? Because a lot of children, all of a sudden, they see a judge, and it's after they were shoplifting or they were doing something stupid with a friend. But I always ask people, why is a kid going to shoplift? If 9 out of 10 times it's for food, they're hungry, they're insecure with food. So maybe let's address those underlying resources so that children know better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm
Yeah.
gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to that because I think I heard you say it starts at home, but
Hmm.
I want to come back to that because I want to make sure that the audience you get the audience questions.
Okay.
Um, can you share can you share an example of a situation in which you had to make a difficult ethical decision and how did you handle it?
Oh gosh.
The audience
This
is rough. Audience is rough today.
oh, this is harder because I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I was like, what can I, because I make a lot of hard decisions, but I don't ever want to break confidentiality with a client.
Yeah.
But okay, let me do one maybe more just like a mentor training that's a little bit similar because I don't want to risk breaking confidentiality with anything. But I did have one time where I was mentoring someone. They were my intern, and all of a sudden, they just stopped showing up.
Mm,
Their laptop to the office was gone,
mm,
and they were no longer responding to anything. So that was a very difficult situation. That was one of my first time having an intern, and I was like, "Oh
mm.
gosh, this is my first intern." She I didn't want to say she stole something,
Yeah.
but she took something from our office, and that was hard for me not to
Oh,
freak
wow.
out and
Yeah.
lash out. So I always kind of count to 10, take a moment, and I think, okay, what's going on here? Does she just not know that she wasn't allowed to do this or whatnot? So I ended up, instead of kind of responding to her of, hey, you need to get this back ASAP. Why'd you take this computer? Like, you have all this information on it. Your semester's over here. I just reached out to her really kindly. I was like, hi, it's been a while. You dropped off. Is there anything going on? And I'm concerned for you. And I just reached out first in a manner of concern.
Mm,
Because that was a really difficult moment. There's a lot of proprietary information. There's a lot of client information on this computer. And all of a sudden her semester's over and I have no idea where it is.
mm.
She responded back and she was like, I'm so sorry, Lauren. I didn't know what to do. I took it. I transferred schools. She had just left the area.
Yeah.
She had
Yeah.
it with her. And it turned out to be such a simple mistake.
Yeah.
And she was so afraid of getting in trouble that she just didn't return it. She just didn't respond. And
Mm,
so in that moment, I was like, thank God I responded to
yeah.
her within a place from concern instead of, because then all of a sudden she was like, I'm going to be back X, Y, and Z time. I'm
Okay.
going to drop it off. I was worried about getting in trouble. And I was like, you know what? I understand you made a mistake. Mistakes happen. Um, so I think that was like a really, and that's kind of a lot of times what I do just in general with my clients when they tell me something where it's on that gray line of, do I have to report it? Do I not have to report it? What's going on? To kind of just take a moment and have a further conversation so I can figure out what's going on, because usually that gets better results than the immediate response of freaking out because I'm getting in trouble.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And the next, um, how would you handle public pressure or media scrutiny in cases that attract a significant attention?
Oh gosh. Well, as a public defender, a few of my cases, I have had scrutiny about them already.
Mm,
And sometimes it's just kind of like you take it on the chin and you keep moving because, as a public defender, it happens. You represent people that the media finds out about, and
mhm,
they don't really think kindly of that. And then I think as a judge, it's very similar where you have to make tough decisions. And doing the right thing isn't always the most popular thing. And I think being a judge, you always have to do what's right, whether it's taking a 15-minute recess if you see media's in the room. And you can, when media's in the room and they're scribbling down so quickly, um I wouldn't be afraid to take a 10-15 minute break so
mm.
I can kind of just take a moment for myself and make sure that I'm okay to keep following the law. um because judges are supposed to be impartial. We're supposed to be able to make decisions without fear of the media, and we need to keep doing that without worry about what the repercussions are going to be. As long as we follow the law, you should never be worried about doing the right thing. And sometimes, um I get sometimes also, there's that phrase, if you're not getting criticized, or if you're not getting, blown up in the media, sometimes you might not be doing the right thing. Seldom, what is that phrase? Like, good girls don't make it, like, seldom do the good girls. Something about, if you're in history and you're making trouble, you're doing the right thing. You're getting attention. Um, and usually that means whoever's in control isn't happy with you. But to me, I'm a judge. I'm going to follow the rules. I like the rules. I like following the law. It makes things very easy to work with and function, even when things get tough.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Now, before we wrap up,
Mhm.
how there's going to be people that's going to have questions
Mhm.
that you and I didn't talk about, or I may not have brought up. And they may want to have a conversation with you. They may want to even volunteer on your campaign
Mhm.
or donate. how could somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for this time. I've had a lot of fun talking with you, Terry.
Oh, sure.
So my website, it's super simple. It's my initials. So you just go to ll4cp.com. And so it's llforcp.com. My website is there with all my contact information, my donation page, a contact form, and I'm on social media too at llforcp on Instagram or even on Facebook. It's like Lauren Leiggi for Common Pleas. But if you go to our website, it's super easy. Our email's there. It's Lauren at ll4cp.com. And our team is super responsive to answering questions or getting people signed up for stuff and volunteering. And we have a pretty cool, fun volunteer base. So if anyone wants to come door knock and talk with people, we're more than happy to have people.
Wow. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And before we go, Lauren Leiggi, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, a candidate for Court of Common Pleas. Is there anything that you would like to say before we close it out?
Thank you. I would just like to say that I appreciate the time, Terry, with you this Sunday and everyone else for tuning in. Please reach out. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'm always up. I think there's nothing better than having an uncomfortable conversation with someone. And really, at the end of the day, I want to bring empathy to the bench. And I think sometimes that's scary when you have a leader that's operating from a space of empathy. Because, like what I said earlier,
Mhm.
empathy means recognizing where other people are coming from, knowing when to give up your power, and also kind of knowing when to, be a little bit more stern if you have to, and being able to make those tough decisions. So that's why I'm running for judge, to just bring that compassion, that empathy to the bench, to make sure that everyone's heard and that everyone has a representation on the bench, no matter really where you're coming from. I love to get to know people, so I appreciate the time and hopefully the support from everyone in Allegheny County, coming up in the primary in May.
And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Candidate Lauren Leiggi for Court of Common Pleas. Lauren, we thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, and we look forward to seeing you on the campaign and maybe having you back.
Of course, I'll be back if there's time for it.
Absolutely, absolutely.